The root cause of all our suffering is this alienation from God. Because we are alienated. We have turned our backs to Him. A very renowned psychiatrist, he said, he diagnosed the sickness of man to this alienation from God. He said, man is sick because he has cut himself from God, who is the source and sustainer of life. And the more we turn away from God, we are going to be restless and disturbed. This is the very reason why we are suffering. And what do? Man tries to remove all this emptiness, the loneliness and scarcity that he experiences with worldly efforts. Educates himself, earns money, marries, makes merry, entertains. Yet, he is disappointed. Everything is short-lived. Now, God, what does He do for us? He does two things. Firstly, He reveals the eternal code of laws or the code of conduct through the Vedas at the beginning of every creation. What we are supposed to do and what we should not do. What is going to lead us to suffering and what kind of karma is going to get us out of the cycle of birth and death to eventually experience that supreme bliss. So, all this has been revealed by Him in the eternal book of scriptures, the Vedas. We are not bothered to know. We are too busy. So what does He do? Then He sends those who are so dear to Him, His saints. He sends them to this world to teach us those eternal truths in a simplified form. And day and night, these saints tirelessly work for our welfare. They teach us, they inspire us. But we don't even listen to them. We just ignore them. Then what does God do? He punishes us. Just as a father in the material world, he punishes his child when the child is disobedient. So God punishes us. Now you might say, well, I have no objection. He's my father. If He punishes me Himself, I have no objection. But why does He use other people? My wife, my son, and my neighbor, and my friend, and circumstances in the world to punish me. If He did it directly, I wouldn't mind. He is doing it directly. You don't know. You see, God Himself resides within us and He watches us all the time and makes a note of our every action. He does it. He has not given this job to any servant or any saint. No, He does it Himself. He rewards us. He decides the little bit that we have to go through in the form of destiny. It's His decision. So He punishes us directly. There's nobody in between at all. It's like, suppose somebody hits you with a stick. Is the stick responsible for hitting you? No. It's the person that's responsible. So it is God who directly hits us. And the reason He does that, as I said, it is because He wants us to turn back towards Him. The only intention is, if my child suffers in this world, then he will be fed up, he will get detached from this world, and he will come to me. That is the reason behind the suffering that we experience. In fact, He is more concerned about our welfare than a father in the material world. Whatever He does, we must remember this one important point. Whatever happens to us in life, good or bad, we have an objection mostly to suffering or misery. Even that misery is a part of His grace. That's all He can do. It's only love and grace. Just as in the material world, we have courts, we have prisons, we have policemen. All this is to maintain law and order, isn't it? Now, how much amount of public money is being utilized for maintaining law and order? Just think of it. Now, suppose this, for one day, 24 hours, everybody was let free. There won't be any policemen. There won't be any punishment today. Do what you want to. Can you imagine the disaster? Murders, rapes, stealing, burning of stores, houses. Just imagine with all this law and all this arrangement, there's so much of crime in the world. What would happen even if everything was lifted for 24 hours? Now the same thing happens with God. Whatever He does, it is only a form of His grace, just as a mother in the world. I mean, we've been scolded and spanked sometimes by our parents. Was our mother our enemy? No. That was a form of her love. The first day the little child stole a pencil, the mother scolded the child. If she had smiled and patted the child on the back, oh, you got a pencil today, great. I don't have to buy you a new one. If she had done that, what would happen? He would end up becoming a thief. She scolded him the first day, and next time he stole again, she punished him. And then after that, he never stole again. When did this happen? When she scolded him and she spanked him. In the same way, I remember a beautiful saying of a philosopher and writer, Paul Brunton. Paul Brunton said, "The sufferers of today are the seekers of tomorrow." We think that suffering is a form of God's anger. But actually, it is our ignorance of divine law. That's why many a times when there is some suffering, some terrible suffering, we question, why me? It's all due to our ignorance. There was once a Muslim, and he was always complaining. There are a lot of people who are grumbling and moaning and complaining. So he was also one of them, and he said, "Why have you done this to me? You've given me all the misery that anybody could have in life, and I think you are really very unjust. You behave as though I'm your stepchild, and everybody is all very happy. They are much better than I am." He used to do it every day. This was his prayer. So one night he had a dream. You've been complaining all this time? Tomorrow morning, just make a bundle of all your miseries and all your problems, put them in a bag, and leave them in the mosque. Now, early next morning, he packed up everything, all his problems, and he rushed to the mosque. What did he see? He saw even his neighbor rushing with a big bag. The king was rushing with a big bag. The pandit, the priest, the mullah. Everybody had a bag of suffering there. And nobody's bag was small. Even those whom he thought were happier than he was. Everybody had a bag. The moment they reached the mosque, there was the voice of Allah from up. "Now everybody hang your bags on the court rail." Everybody rushed to get rid of their bags. And they were about to leave the mosque. Thank God, what grace. Again the voice came, now each of y'all take one bag back home. Choose anyone you want to. Everybody rushed. And do you know what they did? They picked up their own bag. Because who knows what's in the other bag? A lion, a scorpion, or what? They had learned to live with their own problems. So the fact is, this is a part of life. Nanaka dukhiya sab sansar. And this suffering is actually a blessing. It is a tool, as Henry Beecher says, that troubles are tools that God uses to fashion us for better things. The mother said, the Divine Mother, she said, be thankful for the ordeals, for they are the shortest way to the divine. We have an example. One example. It's in the Bhagavad Puran of a lady named Kunti, the mother of the 5 Pandavas. Do you know what she asked God? She actually said, Vipada santuna shashvat tatra tatra jagad guru. She said to Lord Krishna, I want you to deprive me of all my worldly accomplishments and possessions. I want you to give me suffering. What a favor to ask of God. We would never dream of asking for such a thing. Never. But why did she ask for such a thing? She asked for this because one who is devoid of material splendors or attainments, then for such a person, there is no room for pride. And pride is the wall that separates us from God. And when we don't have any accomplishments or material prosperity, then people don't want to know us. When people don't want to know us, we are alone. And when we are alone, then God is with us. That's what she said. Because nobody will care for me, then I know you are going to be there for me. There was a story of a blacksmith. You know what a blacksmith is? An ironmonger. He was a devotee of God, but he had lots of problems. And somehow or the other, we always notice people who are devotees, their problems are noticeable. Problems are there with everybody. But when people who are devotees, they have problems, we tend to think that because you are a devotee of God, there should not be any problem in your life. Anyway, so blacksmith had a lot of problems, and one of his friends said, what is God doing for you? I mean, what's the point being a devotee of God? You've got so many problems. You know what blacksmith do? They heat iron and they mold it into whatever they need to make. And some bits of iron, they cannot mold at all. It's called scrap. So scrap is thrown in one corner. They have no use of it at all. So this blacksmith said, I feel so fortunate that God is molding me. I'm thankful for that. I don't want to be scrap that He's going to throw away. So God brings us into hot waters, not to burn us, but to cleanse us. In every situation, we must have, it needs a bit of training of the mind and understanding. In every situation, we must develop an attitude of gratitude. If we change our attitude, then God will help to change our lives. We must remember that all that He does, every action of His, there is only love and grace behind it. He cannot do anything. We should feel sorry for God. That's all He can do. Love and shower grace. And we can do many more things. We can love, we can hate, we can be jealous, we can be angry, we can be so many things. But God can only be merciful. He can only love. You know that there were many demons that God killed. Ravan and Kans and everybody. What happened to them? The saints saw this and they could see what mercy, what grace of the Lord. And what did we see? We saw that God had killed a really cruel person. That's all it was to us. So we have to have this faith, this strong understanding faith that whatever is happening in our lives, especially the suffering, that suffering is going to bring us closer to the divine. And we have to remember that from there, from saints and God, we can only get love. We can only get grace. There cannot be any curse or anger from them. Once a couple happened to be on a honeymoon. They were on a cruise around the Mediterranean. And one fine day, there was a very, very bad storm. The storm was so bad that the boat was rocking violently and it could just capsize any minute. Now the man he had a strong belief and faith in God, but his wife didn't. And she said to him, "What is your God doing? We're going to almost die. What's the point of your faith?" He said, "Yes, I know these waves are very dangerous. But my Allah, who is moving these waves, He is kind and loving, and I have faith in that." And in order to teach her that lesson, before that, he drew out his sword and he started aiming it at her as though he was going to kill her. And she just stood there, absolutely unperturbed. "Aren't you scared? I'm going to kill you. I've taken out a sword." "I'm not scared." "But why not?" "Because I know you love me too much to kill me." I mean, this was honeymoon. It can happen much later. That's a different point. But she said that. So in the same way, He loves us too much. He cannot do anything wrong to us. We have to remember that. And all our suffering, whatever He's giving us, is because we are alienated. He wants us to turn around. And He has given us this freedom of action, so that we can perform the right karma and turn towards Him and be eternally blessed. Tulsidas severely condemns those who are blessed with human life and they make excuses of God's will and fate and the time. When the time is ripe, it will happen. Jo natarai bhavasagar nar samaj aspai sokrit nindak mandamati atamahan gati jai. A person who makes all these excuses, resigns himself to fate and becomes a coward and shuns action, blames God or time, he is a murderer of his own soul and he's going to suffer here and hereafter. Now the next question. Let's get back from where we started. I mentioned that we need the grace of God. We can only know God with His grace. We can only attain Him. Has anybody attained the grace of God? Yes. Has anybody attained God with His grace? Yes, of course. There are many saints. Tulsidas, Surdas, Tukaram, St. Francis of Assisi, etc. So many. Now, I have a question. When God treats everyone equally, then why is it that He graced some and not us? The answer is He graced them because they fulfilled a condition of His. They fulfilled the condition and He graced them. And you have not fulfilled the condition. That's why you are still sitting here, suffering. Oh, said that is a condition. But I thought you've always been saying that God is causelessly merciful. He is the ocean of causeless grace, etc. How can you call him causelessly merciful when he is stipulating a condition, a cause for his grace? He cannot be given that name. I think we better take it back from him. If you are going to say he's causelessly merciful, then even we are causelessly merciful. Because whenever somebody fulfills our self-interest, we are very kind to them. Conditional. But why is the degree of being causelessly merciful only given to God? I don't think it's fair. Even we should get it. And then what is the condition that he has stipulated? We need to know that, but not today, next time. बोले वृंदावन बिहारी लाल की, श्रीमद् सद्गुरु सरकार की।
हमारी राधे जो, 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 मन उन्हीन चरण शरण गहु जो, अशरण की शरण राधिके तो, हमारी राधे जो, हमारी राधे